Hello and welcome to Moxie Bets presented by Caesar Sportsbook. I'm Katie Mox, and today we're talking MLB playoffs plus picks for the full slate of Sunday games in the NFL, our favorite money line, against the spread, totals, props, you name it, we got it. Why? Because we've got Munaf Manji from the Sports Gambling Podcast Network with us today, the prop master, if you will. How are we doing, Munaf?
I'm doing well. It's that month, right? It's October where like we have all sports going on at the same time. At least the four major sports. I know NBA is still around the corner, but we have
Yeah.
NFL that's in full swing. NHL started this week. We're in the midst of MLB playoffs, so we just had extensive conversations offline about it. But yeah, it's a good time to be alive, I guess we can say.
Yes. Well, depends on how you look at it. If you're a sports fan, it's a good time to be alive.
If, yeah, I get
You're
it.
clearly not everywhere in the world. But okay, so let's talk baseball because I was into baseball in the beginning of the season when nothing else was going on. And then once football comes in, I forget all about baseball, but I still want to make some money. That's why we have you on here because you do host the MLB podcast for Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Couple questions just off the top. Who's been the biggest surprise so far this postseason? I mean, the Dodgers unceremoniously let go, slightly more embarrassing even than last year.
It is that series, right? It's the fact that the Dodgers got swept, Katie. Like, I
Yes.
mean, you
Oh,
won 100+ game for what is it now 2-3 seasons in a row,
yeah.
and now back-to-back years you get eliminated by a divisional opponent in the
It's not
divisional
as good as
round.
you. The Diamondbacks are not as good as the Dodgers. The Padres weren't better than the Dodgers. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah, and I know it's I think it's the most shocking that they got number one swept, but it was by the Diamondbacks, who I know didn't have a lot of big expectations coming into this season. But when you kind of, if you're a true baseball hardcore fan and you looked at this team, like you gave them an opportunity to at least get into the playoffs, or
That
at
was it.
least make the wild card like they did. They were in that division up until I think before the All-Star break, but then after that, the Dodgers did Dodgers things and pulled away. But I mean, give a lot of credit to the Arizona Diamondbacks. I mean, the way they've pitched, the way
Yeah.
they've, hit the baseball and scored runs, especially early on in the game, and maintained their lead to only sweep the Dodgers. I think the obvious answer probably is the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Yeah, that has been the most surprising. All right, so let's take a look at the World Series odds right now. You got the Astros as the favorite because they're the Astros. You, of course, living in
Why are you
Texas.
why are you rolling your eyes when you said that?
Because they just win everything. So it's like, of course, they're it's like saying, "Oh, the Chiefs are the favorite to win the Super Bowl again." Like,
Yeah.
sure. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like it is what it is. You're from Houston, so obviously, you're an Astros fans. The rest of us would like to see something different. It's like the Patriots, back when Tom Brady was there. It's like, "Oh, the Patriots again." But then you got the other Texas team, the Rangers plus 320. The Phillies have been frisky in the postseason the last couple of years. They're at plus 325. Then those Diamondbacks, I mean, you said it yourself. You expected them to get in the wild card round. They're the biggest surprise. Can they continue to surprise at plus 400? And then you've got the Braves, who, was the other best team in baseball outside of the Dodgers in terms of their record at plus 700.
I mean, I think right now, if I wanted to put money down on a team, it just feels like it's the Phillies year.
Okay.
Last year, they made it all the way to the World Series just to fall short to the Houston Astros. But if you take a look at this Phillies team, I believe they still have the best 1-2 top starters left in the MLB playoffs, right? We talk about the Astros. I know they have Justin Verlander, but I know he's a year older. But after that, for the Astros, there's a lot of question marks. I know Framber Valdez is there as well, but he didn't look very good against the Twins in the loss that they did suffer. I think that was on Sunday against the Twins, and the only loss in that series. But for this Phillies team, I mean, Bryce Harper is just absolutely ripping the cover off of the ball, hitting, towering home runs. Zach Wheeler had a gem of a start for the Phillies back in, I believe it was game 2. Aaron Nola had a great start last night for the Phillies. So Phillies just kind of have that it factor. I know they have a sour taste left in their mouth from what happened last season. But I think the series does go 5. I think the Braves do get the job done, but I feel like Zach Wheeler will come in game 5, get the job done, and then advance to obviously the championship series against the Diamondbacks, where I feel like the Diamondbacks fall a little short there. But if you're asking me to put a money down right now, I'm definitely going with the Philadelphia Phillies.
All right, plus 325. Now, in my notes here, it says that you're a Red Sox fan. Well, I understand why you're a Houston Astros fan. You live in Houston, of course, home team.
Yeah.
How is it that you are also a Red Sox fan, and what does this do to your fandoms?
I mean, my favorite color is red, so it just made kind of sense. No, I'm just kidding.
Ah, so you're a 49ers fan.
Yes. Well, I did you a favor this year. I didn't put any futures down on them this year because the last 2 seasons I've done that. They fell a little bit short. But
Thank you.
uh
It's like me with the Bills. Bills fans, you're welcome because I didn't put any futures on them this year either.
I think for Earl, my fandom for the Red Sox came when I think I was just watching a random like ESPN like segment and they were talking about David Ortiz. And
Mm,
this was at the time when he was with the Minnesota Twins before he got recruited to the Red Sox by Manny Ramirez. And that's where I just kind of like followed David Ortiz and I followed David Ortiz over to the Red Sox. And, I kind of looked at their team and, it made a lot of sense because I was a fan of Manny Ramirez when he was with the Cleveland Indians at the time, now the Guardians, obviously. But those two guys in that lineup and for the Boston Red Sox, just the history that they did have and the drought that they were in for not winning a World Series up until like the
yes.
2000 and I think it was like 2003, 2004. But
2004, yeah.
yeah, and then I fell in love with the
They
team and then
finally broke the curse of the Bambino.
yeah. And
Yeah.
then Dustin Pedroia came along. So, I'm not the tallest guy in the room, and Dustin Pedroia is not the tallest guy in the room
Mm,
either. But
okay. Short king camaraderie there.
yeah, so he came out and he came on this Red Sox team. He defied the odds. He won AL MVP, and that team just kind of came together. So I think since like 2001 when David Ortiz got there, 2002 when he got there. I mean, I've been a Sox fan since then. So people kind of call me a bandwagoner, but I'm a fan of both teams. Obviously, you gotta root for your local team, but you
Yeah.
also you have a team that you always root for outside of the city.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. An underrated movie I feel like is Fever Pitch that has Jimmy Fallon and Drew Barrymore, and it kind of takes place during that historic run for the Boston Red Sox when they finally win the World Series again. And just I don't, if you haven't seen it, see it. It's funny, it's cute,
Yeah.
and completely underrated. All right, one more question for you. Any active MLB futures that you're holding on to that have made it this far into the playoffs?
Yeah, so when the Astros were struggling a little bit earlier in the season, where they were kind of down the standings in the AL West, I mean, the books popped up a 10-1 on the Astros to win the World Series. So I did put something down on the Astros at that point, at that 10-1. And then I do have some Braves futures from the beginning of the season. I just thought this team was just going to be one of the best teams in the MLB, at least during the regular season. I mean, they won 100 plus games. The offense just put up historical numbers during the regular season. They are trailing 2-1. It's win or go home for the Atlanta Braves here tonight. But I did prior to Game 3 also get down on the Phillies, like I did mention, around 6-1. Now they're obviously trimmed down around plus 325, like you mentioned, Katie, just because they won.
Yeah.
Game 3, but I'm hoping it's a rematch of the Phillies and the Astros, so I can just kind of sit back and relax and hopefully the Astros win for my fandom, but also put a little bit of more money in my pocket as well.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here. That is your MLB fix. We come back. We're talking football, baby. Week 6 Sunday slate. Stick around. Why should you bet with Caesars Sportsbook? 2 words, Caesars Rewards. Every bet brings you closer to the type of benefits only Caesars can offer. Hotel stays, VIP experiences, sports and concert tickets, and more. It's not just an app, it's an empire. Welcome back to Moxie Bets, presented here by Caesars Sportsbook. And we are with Munaf Manji of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, previewing week 6 of the NFL. And Munaf, we were talking about this offline. This was a tough week to handicap, and you and I were even texting last night and talking about it a little bit in the pre-show. The lines are sharp. It's either a field goal or a touchdown, or sometimes even more. There's a couple double digits in there, and it's like, oh man, I had a hard time, finding the edge. I mean, of course, we have extracted value for you people, but this week was tough, don't you think? I think this was the toughest week for me, handicapping wise.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. You have a couple of teams that are favored by the touchdowns. I know we'll talk about it here in a second, but then you have a couple of teams that are favored by double digits, and rightfully so, right? But this is one of the uglier weeks. I know every week isn't going to be as easy, or to find value, I guess we can say, like you
Yeah.
mentioned there, Katie. But yeah, this was one of the tougher weeks. But hey, I know we hopefully we've dug up some winners for the listeners at least.
All right. Well, let's start with money line or spread. What's your first bet that you like, either against the spread or straight up?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go with the Commanders first half money line. They're going
Ooh.
down to Atlanta to take on the Falcons, and this one was I don't want to say pretty simple for me, but it's a trend that's 100%. So ever since Desmond Ritter became the starting quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons, that's 9 games now, including last week against my Houston Texans. The Falcons are 0-9 ATS in the first half
Mm,
with Desmond Ritter as a starting quarterback, and now you have a Washington Commanders team that has a very sour taste in their mouth after what transpired on Thursday Night Football against the Chicago Bears, who were winless. They put up a 40 spot on that Washington Commanders team. So I think they'll be ready and ready to come out in this game in the first half, at least against the Falcons, and hopefully have the lead in that first half. Also, the Falcons in those 9 games when Desmond Ritter is a starter, they're lying around 12.67 points, or we'll round that up to about 13 points in that first half. So
mm.
I'm looking at Commanders first half money line against the Falcons. And also, if you do find a team total for the Commanders, anywhere 9.5 or 10.5 around that range, I would also look at the over for them to at least score 11 or more points in that first half.
The Falcons surprised me last weekend, particularly Desmond Ritter. And I don't know if he just had the home field behind him or something, but Arthur Smith has refused to let him throw the ball for the first few weeks, and then all of a sudden he was out there, throwing it, and that defense surprised me too, because
Yeah.
as frisky as the Texans have been, they weren't really able to get a touchdown until the very end of the game. But I like this. I do think it's a good bounce back spot for the Commanders, and I'm just not sure if that's the real Desmond Ritter. Like, I almost think that that's like an offshoot, and he's going to go back to being kind of not as great.
I felt like last week, if he didn't have a great start, like the narrative was there because the backup for the Falcons is Tyler Heineke. So
Yeah.
if he had like interception or a couple turnovers in that first half, you would have seen Tyler Heineke come into that second half.
Yeah.
And week 6, he gets to go against his former team. But I give credit to Desmond Ritter; he bounced
Yeah.
back very nicely.
Well, and to your point, let's say Heineke does come in. It's not going to be until the second half, which means the Commanders can still cover this first half here, because I do think that Heineke is better than Desmond Ritter. All right, this one, it's gross, but I'm still going to lay the 7 with the Rams over the Cardinals. Now, the Cardinals are a very frisky team. They've been super fun to watch. Yes, they're only 1-4, but I think that they're a lot better than people gave them credit for, myself included, before the season started. But as soon as James Conner went down last week, I just feel like the offense was completely exposed. Dobbs threw for 2 interceptions, the lowest amount of yards since week 1. If you look at Connor's impact, through the season so far, he's ran for 364 yards, 2 touchdowns, averaging 5.4 yards per carry. And then you look at the running back that came in for him, DeMarcado, and he only
Mhm.
had 45 yards on 10 carries. So that's a huge drop off in the run game. And the Rams are definitely looking to bounce back after the Eagles held them scoreless in the second half of last week. It's really a perfect week to do that too for Matt Stafford, because Arizona ranks 26th. Their pass defense does. And they were able to, Joe Burrow finally looked like Joe Burrow again because of how bad this Arizona pass defense is. The jury's still out for me on
Yeah.
Burrow and the offense. I mean, I know historically this is a very good quarterback, and I'm not saying I don't like Joe Burrow, but like, I just haven't seen it from them. And so I'll look to fade them a little bit later, which I'll talk about. But you look at Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, and the big question coming into, Kupp being injured is like, how is he going to fit in with Puka? What is this offense was going to look like? And I feel like all of that was figured out last week. I mean, both of these guys went absolutely off, and they're beautiful together, opening up the field for Matt Stafford. They both scored a touchdown. They had at least 70 yards. I believe Cooper Kupp had like 116 or something, or over 100 for sure. And then you just look at, McVay versus the Cardinals. I believe it's like 11-1. Stafford 3-1 against Arizona since 2021, throwing for 7 touchdowns and only 1 interception. I just think that the clock has struck 12 on the Cardinals, and they're back to being Cinderella here. I don't know if I'm just, the ball gown is gone. The ball gown is gone.
Yeah, I double like a double dagger in my back last week because I had James Conner over on his rushing yards as my best bet last week.
Would
I
have
think
hit.
I got it at 61.5, it closed at 63.5. and he ended up with 6 rushes and 46 yards before the injury happened. So,
That
and then
would have
also
hit.
had, yeah, and then also had the Rams last week plus 4.5. And like you
So did
mentioned,
I. And it started out good, and then they
yeah,
just couldn't score. But, the Eagles' defense is very good, and they were, especially up front, they were able to create pressure on Matt
exactly.
Stafford that I just don't think that the Cardinals can do. And this is just a good get-right spot. I'm taking them for a touchdown.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I know it's a touchdown for the Rams, but like you mentioned, it's a good bounce back spot, not a travel situation. They're playing at home again. I know they don't have much of a home field, but again, you take the travel situation out of it. And like you mentioned, I mean, Cooper Kupp came into that game last week and he looked like he didn't miss a beat,
At all.
even though he missed the first 4 weeks of the regular season for the Rams. And again, when you have these type of offensive weapons for Sean McVay, you know he's going to find a way to make it work. So I know a lot of people were down on the Rams for on their season long win total, but I think this is an opportunity for this team now to probably to get on a run here. Now that you get Cooper Kupp back
Yeah.
and you have the offensive weapon, so I'll have a play later in this game here as well. But I'm with you here, Katie.
Yeah, and you talk about the Rams' home field advantage, sure, against teams where there's a lot of transplants in Los Angeles, like Philadelphia, like San Francisco, Dallas, any of the New York teams. You're not going to have a home field advantage. But Arizona, there's going to be more Rams fans, I think, than Cardinals fans there, because most people from Arizona stay in Arizona because it's nice there too. All right, what is another spread or money line that you are either liking or leaning towards this weekend?
I think I know we were talking offline about this as well. Probably the most interesting game of the week, but you wouldn't anticipate it being these two teams. The Detroit Lions heading down to Tampa to take on the Buccaneers. I'm taking the
Wild.
Buccaneers, yeah, plus 3.5 here
Mm.
against the Detroit Lions.
Wow. Is it
Buccaneers coming
because
off. Yeah,
because
go ahead.
okay, sorry. Well, I'll
No,
let you
no.
finish, but they're missing some of their pass catchers. Does that get into this?
Yeah, 100%. I know they're getting Amon-Ra St. Brown back. I know Jahmyr Gibbs should be back as well. But I mean, you take a look at this Lions team. I know they had the impressive Week 1 victory against the defending Super Bowl champions in the Kansas City Chiefs, who didn't have Travis Kelce in that game. But I mean, they haven't really
True.
played anybody else outside of that Week 1 game. I mean, they had last week. They beat the winless Panthers. They got the Buccaneers. The Packers on a short week. They
Lost
had
to the
the
Seahawks at home.
loss of the Seahawks at home. They had the Falcons come in, who are not a very good road team. So now you're expecting this Lions team to go on the road, being a 3.5 point favorite against a Tampa team who I think everybody was expecting them to be one of the worst teams of the National Football League for this season. But Baker Mayfield has looked actually pretty good for this Buccaneers team. He's playing with that swag. I know they may be missing Mike Evans because he is dealing with an injury, but I like a team coming off of the bye here. I think they'll be ready to go. I like getting the hook on the 3.5, currently over on Caesars at plus 3.5. So I like them as a home underdog here. I'm going to take the Bucks here plus 3.5 against the Lions.
Yeah, I like that. And, talk about this Lions team, I think always has everybody loves Dan Campbell, right? And
Yeah.
everybody wants the most poverty franchise in all of NFL to finally come out and be a winner. And so there's the vibes are always high coming into the season. And I will say Jared Goff has impressed me more in Detroit than he ever did in Los Angeles, even when they were going to Super Bowls. And they've got the great pass catchers and they've got the usage of Jahmyr Gibbs still just like is, and for fantasy managers for sure. And I totally understand that he's not your lead back and you want to ease him into it, but it's been kind of his usage has been a little bit frustrating to me because
It's been such a reach on the draft. I don't know why they drafted him so high.
well, because who's their lead back? Montgomery, right?
Yeah,
Montgomery
Montgomery,
does.
and he's been
Yeah, Montgomery.
impressive.
He's been impressive, but they could still. I think they could committee it a little bit more. And you see Jahmyr, Gibbs used more in the pass game, but that's still kind of hit or miss. And yeah, you drafted in this high, and then whatever. That's neither here nor there. I agree with you on this Bucks. Plus, it's risky.
Yeah, it's an ugly week, but
Yeah,
I've been told that some of the ugliest bets to make are sometimes the best bets that you
yeah.
make.
If it isn't ugly, we don't want it.
Yeah.
That's what people say in the bar when they've had too many drinks. All right. I'm going to take an ugly one too. And kind of a dog here. I'm taking the Seahawks plus the 2.5. And I kind of alluded to this in my last bet. Is Joe Burrow back, or does the Arizona pass defense just suck? You know what I mean? Like, you can't go from what we've seen from Joe Burrow to all of a sudden he's like a rock star. Like, I just don't see that switch happening so fast. And if you look at this line, it opened up at 3, Cincy -3. It's moved to Cincy -2.5. So that's kind of favoring the Hawks or valuing the Hawks a little bit more here. And Seattle's secondary is considerably better
Yes.
than Arizona's. You got Woolen, you got Witherspoon, who's been awesome. They should be getting Jamal Adams back at safety. And then you just look at what the Hawks have done this year. They've on the road, they're 2-0.
Yeah.
They're 3-1 against the spread. They've won 3 straight. They're coming off a bye week. And, if I look at the way that the money and the tickets are, most of the money is on Cincinnati here, but Seattle getting more of that money at 68%. It feels honestly like this is an upset spot. I just don't have enough guts to take Seattle money line.
I think this is the battle of the fraudulent teams. We'll find out which team,
Right,
which,
yeah.
which team is going to emerge as the winner in this game. But you mentioned, the Seattle's coming off of the bye week, so they're going to be prepared, getting reinforcements back on the defensive side of the football. Cincinnati has not been one of the best, if not, I think they're down there with Denver as far as being one of the worst rush defenses. So expect a big rushing attack here from the Seattle Seahawks, and maybe keep that offense of the Cincinnati Bengals off the field with Joe Burrow. And we saw what Jamar Chase did last week. Finally, because for my fantasy team, I had both Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase as a stack there, and they finally showed up last week. So I think we'll find out more about both of these teams this upcoming week, because for Cincinnati, I believe they have your Niners and the Buffalo Bills on deck, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a big game for, I would say, both teams.
It's for both teams too, because in order for Seattle to keep pace with the Niners, they have to win this game. Otherwise, they just get kind of blown into oblivion. All right, let's look at some team totals next. I'm going to look at tonight's game, Thursday Night Football, and this is gross. But give me the Broncos team total over 17.5. And if I'm going to do that, I'm also going to take Russ over 1.5 passing touchdowns, because that's at plus 165, and they kind of go hand in hand. Look, I'm not high on the Broncos at all. But 17.5 still feels too low. They've hit the over on this in every game, but week 1 versus the Raiders, KC defense has been elite, holding opponents to 21 or under this season, but that still allows Denver to get over this. You look at the weather tonight, it's projected to have 23-mile-per-hour winds, a strong chance of rain. So then that would lead you to think like, okay, well, they're going to run the ball more, but the Chiefs' run defense is really stingy, especially in the red zone. Kansas City has given up just 1 rushing touchdown all season, and that was week 1 versus Detroit. So the Broncos are going to have to get this done by air, wind, and done, I mean, over their team total, not win. Okay, no one's saying they're winning this game. But they're not going to be running the ball. At least they're not going to have success with that, even with the wind and with the rain. So I look for this game plan to include a lot of short passes, limit the amount of turnovers that can happen, specifically in the red zone. So I like them to get over the 17.5, get at 18. And if I think they're doing quick short passes, then Russ to get 2 passing touchdowns at plus 165, there's value there.
The offense hasn't been the problem for the Denver Broncos. It's been the defense, right? Their rush defense has, it might as well not even be out there, because they've given up so many yards on the ground, have the Denver Broncos defense. But Russell Wilson hasn't been too bad. I think he's had at least 2 passing touchdowns in 4 of the 5 games thus far this season. I know he had the fumble last week against the Jets that pretty much sealed the victory for them, and Sean Payton kind of went ballistic on Russell Wilson. But I think that, I'm with you. Again, you mentioned they've done this 4 out of 5 games thus far this season. My best bet on the propcast as far as player props for Thursday Night Football game was Russell Wilson over on his pass attempts. Because I feel like I got it at 32.5.
Uh-huh.
So, if you take a look, we talk about this Chiefs offense, right? They're going to put up points. So it's only going to have to enable the Denver Broncos to, number one, throw the football and also score points to keep up with the pace of scoring that the Kansas City Chiefs do. And I know you mentioned the weather is going to be a factor in this game here tonight, but I like it. I think that they're more than capable of at least scoring, 20 points, whether that's 2 touchdowns, 2 field goals, but it's going to have to be on the back of Russell Wilson.
Yeah, they don't have a choice. They can't run the ball as much as you would want to run the ball in these conditions. It's just not going to work out for them. What's the total that you're looking at?
So let's go back to that Rams game we were talking about earlier. I'll just go with another, team total. I got the Rams over 27.5 points against the Cardinals in this game. And, Take a look at the 3 road games this season that the Cardinals have played in. I know week 1 they went to Washington. They only allowed 20 points, but they gave up, let me see, I read in my notes here. They gave up 24. They gave up 37 to the Seahawks, and then they gave up 42 as well. Did the Cardinals. I'm sorry, they gave up 34 last week to the Cardinals, to the Bengals. I'm sorry. So this, again, we're going back to what we talked about. This past defense is just not very good. You got Cooper Kupp back. You have Puka Nacua, who's just putting up numbers this season for this Rams offense.
I love him.
The running back, Kyron Williams, has been good as well. And you have Sean McVay going up against the secondary against the Cardinals. You know he's going to put up a scheme where they're going to put up points. And like you mentioned, Katie, they put up, 14 points last week in the first half to only get shut out in the second half against a much better Eagles team. I think this is a game where they at least get 4 touchdowns. Won't be surprised if they put up 30-plus points in this game against the Arizona Cardinals. So Rams team total over 27.5 points for me.
All right. I like it. And that plays into what I want to happen with that game. So let's go Rams. I give this out every week, and I know that you like this as well. Niners team total over 22.5. It has hit 5 weeks in a row, people. They have scored at least 30 in every single game. They have a top 3 offense, and they have a top 3 defense. And yes, the Browns have the number 2 scoring defense in the NFL, allowing just 15 points per game, but they have not faced anyone like the 49ers, and they just let the Ravens drop 28 on them. Deshaun Watson likely isn't going to play. I feel like he missed practice again yesterday. So that's not looking good on offense, which means their defense is going to be out there, particularly for a long time. They're going to get gassed. They're going to get tired. And Dallas supposedly was supposed to be this big test for the 49ers. And yeah, they were able to neutralize Christian McCaffrey, kind of. I mean, he still got a touchdown, but he didn't run all over them. But then that just opens up George Kittle. And the Niners have just way too many options. And Brock Purdy is just playing so well, even under pressure, that there's just, I don't know why this is 22.5. Like this is giving way too much respect for the Browns defense and not enough respect for the 49ers offense. And again, you look at what the Niners were able to do with Micah Parsons. He had 2 hits last week?
Yeah.
Supposed to be defensive player of the year. He did nothing. So Niners over 22.5.
I mean, I can't argue it. I mean, you laid the case out there. Brock Purdy has just been that man. The problem has become is that everybody's just waiting for Brock Purdy to have a bad game to be like, oh, I told you so. Right. What about all the 13, 14, 15 other games that he's put up 30-plus points for the San Francisco 49ers? Again, yeah, you talk about the defense for the Browns, who has been very good this season. There's no question about that. But for like you mentioned, the weapons that the 49ers offense have, I mean, if you just let alone have Christian McCaffrey, who I personally think should be MVP this season, but that's a different conversation. Yeah, I'm not going to argue 22.5. I think this will be a 27-7 victory.
Nobody has enough players to defend the amount of offense of the 40. Again, it's like last week, okay, let's try to stop Christian McCaffrey. Well, then you had George Kittle that had 3 touchdowns, and Juszczyk got a touchdown. It's like, sorry, we just have a ton of ways to beat you.
If I'd known it would have been George Kittle's birthday, I think it was like the following day or the previous day, yes. I would have pounded the George Kittle props, but
I didn't find out until right before the game. Well, one, I've taken George Kittle to have multiple touchdowns a couple times this season, thinking, against the Seahawks, and then against maybe it was the Cardinals, and then of course, no touchdowns. They haven't played the Seahawks yet. It was
the Cardinals, because you and I talked about it. Because I told you like the tight ends, against the Cardinals just absolutely go off, and
didn't really do. But it seems to me the George is only going to have a big game when Christian McCaffrey can't do anything. Do you know what I mean? Because otherwise he's just used to block. But when they see the Christian McCaffrey, they're like, all right, fine. Well, let's do a reverse flea flicker here. And that was just beautiful to see. But you are looking at one more team total.
I am.
I see it on here.
Oh, let me check my notes because
Dolphins. You have Dolphins over 30.5.
I'm sorry. Dolphins.
Maybe we don't want to take it anymore, Munaf. Maybe we're off. No.
Look, the Dolphins offense, ever since, one of your former coordinators, Mike McDaniel, comes over and has put together this roster of just speed, right? We talk about, we know what Tyreek Hill is all about when he was with the Chiefs. It's getting down the field, Patrick was like, oh, he's down there somewhere. I'll throw the ball. And more times than not, he's catching the football. And then they drafted Jalen Waddle out of Alabama, who's absolute speed. But if you're not actually watching these Miami games, and if you're like just watching it like on a box score or on an app,
Yeah.
you'll see that they start from their own 20. Within 2 plays, they're already in the red zone on the upper of their opponents, just because how potent this offense is. And now they go up against a Carolina Panthers defense this week, where we saw last week they gave up 40 some odd points to the Detroit Lions last week. And now you have to go up against defending a guy like Tyreek Hill. You have to go up against Tua. You have to go up against Jalen Waddle. I know they're going to be missing their running back, who just has been running all over teams, who was put on the IR for 4 weeks. But you still have Raheem Mostert in that backfield. I won't be surprised if this Dolphins offense puts up a 40 spot here. And again, Mike McDaniels is one of those humble coaches where he knows that he can go out probably every single week and put up 40 points against a defense. We saw them put up 70 points against the Broncos. More times than not, they're going to be in that 30-point range. So I expect them to at least score 5 touchdowns in this game against a winless Panthers team. I'm taking the team total over for the Dolphins, 30.5.
It's hard to argue with that. I mean, Devon Achane, excuse me, he's changed his name so many times. Achane going down is a bummer for my fantasy team because I picked him up and he's been balling for me. But like you said, I mean, they have Jeff Wilson Jr. I think is coming back or should be back, and then you got Raheem Mostert that is going to be amazing as well. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to think that they don't score at least 30 points here. Let's move on to player props. I'm going to go Kenneth Walker touchdown. You kind of alluded to this. It's something that you said earlier that you think they're going to run the ball a lot, and that makes a lot of sense. You know, he's averaging 70.8 rushing yards per game this year, 283 total yards. He scored 5 touchdowns, at least 1 in each game that he's played. Since he ranks bottom of the NFL against the run, only Denver is above them, so 31st. He surrendered 188 yards per game. Derrick Henry just had his way with him, finished with 122 yards. And a 29-yard touchdown. I mean, I like him, Kenneth Walker, over his yards as well, but plus 114. I mean, this guy's getting in the end zone. And if I like Seattle to win the game, he's got to score.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, no argument for me here. Talked about how bad this rush defense has been for the Cincinnati Bengals, and just opposing running backs have been able to run all over them. Unfortunately, we talked about James Conner, who got off to an absolute brilliant start last week against the Bengals rush defense. Maybe that the game would have gone different if they still had James Conner last week for the Bengals. So sorry for the Cardinals, but yeah, anytime you have a opposing running back that's going up against the Bengals rush defense, you got to take the plus odds for anytime touchdown. I love it.
Love it. All right, what's a prop that you're looking at?
Yeah, I don't know why I keep going back to this game for the Commanders and the Falcons. Maybe it's one of the worst games of the week, but I mean,
like you said, there's money when it's ugly.
Yeah. I'm looking at Desmond Ritter's longest completion to go over. It's either you could get it either anywhere from 35.5 to 36.5.
Frisky.
And this is really fading the Commanders secondary. They've given up at least a 36 or more yard long completion to a wide receiver in every single game this week, or this season, I should say, except for week 1 against the Arizona Cardinals. If you just kind of go back to what we saw last week, what DJ Moore did against this Washington Commanders defense, I think that either a Drake London or a Kyle Pitts or even a Bijan Robinson is going to have a long completion from Desmond Ridder. And Katie, you alluded to it against the Texans last week. It seemed like the playbook opened up a little bit for Desmond Ridder to throw the football. So maybe that carries over, hopefully in the second half of this game. But I think that I think this is going to be a 5th straight week where the Washington Commanders defense is going to give up a big play. And again, they've given up not only one, but multiple times in a game to the opposing wide receiver. So I'm looking at Desmond Ridder being at home in the dome on a fast track. I think that there's a big play that the Washington Commanders do give up. So Desmond Ridder over, longest completion, 34.5, 35.5.
Well, we saw Ridder play really well in the dome at home in his passing game last week. I mean, I don't know how many he's good for, but I think he's good for at least 1 at this yards. You're looking also at the Bears and the Vikings. Adam Thielen, or actually no, Adam Thielen's not with the Vikings anymore.
Panthers.
Where is he now? Panthers. So you're looking at Adam Thielen over 58.5 receiving yards.
I made the same mistake that you just did because I was like looking for Adam Thielen. I went to the Vikings section. I was like, why is he not here? Oh, he's on the Panthers now.
Yeah. Well, because he was Kirk Cousins' number 1 receiver for so long.
Until Jefferson got there, right?
Yeah, so I said, see ya.
Yeah. For the Panthers, I mean, look, we've read the things on the Twitter versus or X, whatever you may want to call it. They're in the market looking for a number one wide receiver to pair with Bryce Young. But right now, Adam Thielen is that guy for the Carolina Panthers. And if you just kind of go through his game log for the past several weeks, not only has he been leading this team in targets, but he's also leading them in receiving yards. So it hasn't been very pretty right now for this Panthers wide receiving group. When we talk about Adam Thielen, he's that guy as far as reliability comes, right? We talked about Kirk Cousins and him being that number one guy for Kirk Cousins in Adam Thielen. But he's just been so consistent this season for this Panthers this receiving group.
Yeah.
I'm trying to pull up his exact box score here for Adam Thielen. But when you have a guy that's leading the targets, he's been in double-digit targets for 4 straight weeks. He's gone over this number in 4 straight weeks. I think that's just going to continue. And again, we talked about they're playing the Dolphins this week, right? So they're not going to be able to run the football because the Dolphins are just going to put up points.
Good
And
point.
Bryce Young is going to have to throw the football. And he's going to have to find a guy like Adam Thielen, who's been, again, like I mentioned, their number one wide receiver. So the books continue to misprice this number. I'm going to continue taking the over on Adam Thielen, over 58.5 receiving yards in this game against the Dolphins.
Panthers are 0-5. What if they pulled an upset? I mean, we know we don't want this because we want Miami with 30.5, but can you imagine?
This would break all survivor
get
pools.
Their first win against the Miami Dolphins. It's not happening, people, but that would be crazy. All right. This one is I don't know how I feel about it, but I'm taking it. Jimmy G under half a reception, which means he's not throwing a reception. This is interception. Thank you. Well, yeah. I don't know if that was some kind of Freudian slip because he hasn't been that great on offense either, but I don't think he's going to throw an interception. It's at even money. Jimmy G has been god-awful. All right, turning the ball over. I think he's got, 7 interceptions so far this season. I personally profited off it, especially last week in primetime. I think he threw a couple of them, or maybe just one really, really bad one. But 7 interceptions through 5 weeks, god-awful. But the Patriots have been also awful, and they are down bad. I mean, very bad. Back-to-back absolute blowouts. They have not hurried a quarterback to an interception except for one, and that was Tua, and that's an extremely pass-heavy offense, or at least it was in that time. Even Zach Wilson had a clean game versus the Patriots, which is actually wild. Losing Christian Gonzalez, I think, took a lot of steam away from New England's defense. The Patriots just can't get anything done on offense, which to me means that Las Vegas is going to play it a little bit more conservatively, try to get Jimmy Garoppolo not to turn the ball over so much, feed their running back, Josh Jacobs. New England is middle of the pack versus the run. I just think with how bad the Patriots are on offense, the Raiders don't need to be getting crazy here. Don't need to be getting cute. I think they're going to run the ball a lot more. And I think that Jimmy G has his first clean game of the season.
We talk about some of the ugly games this week. We've covered it on this episode for sure. But I mean, look, you know Jimmy G. You've been a 49ers fan, and it's going to be interesting to see in this game like who has the advantage, because I know Jimmy G's been removed from the Patriots for I don't know how many seasons now, and he's probably still familiar with that system as far as what they run defensively. And obviously, Bill Belichick knowing Jimmy G and Josh McDaniels, who was with the Patriots for so many years as well. So it's gonna be a fun cat and mouse game. But yeah, I think for Jimmy G, I think that if they want to win this football game, he can't make mistakes. And again, like you mentioned, that you pound the rock with Josh Jacobs, or it's screen passes, it's check down passes, or find Devontae Adams lined up against a linebacker and try to take advantage that way. So again, against the Patriots, who are absolutely down, and people are starting to call for Bill Belichick's head as far as a head coach of the Patriots, which is kind of wild to me. But again,
look, he could very easily throw an interception, but I think this is the first game that my guy Jimmy G doesn't throw an interception. Don't let me down, Jimmy.
I can't argue against you when you talk about the Niners or the Jimmy G, or this will be the last time on your show that I come on. But yeah, I'm with you.
All right, the time has come, Munaf, for Mox Locks, the one bet We're absolutely taking to the window. I will go first. I'm taking Matt Stafford over 279.5 passing yards. We do know that Stafford likes to, and by the way, this goes with both of our bets, right? Because you've got the Rams over their team total. I like them to cover minus the touchdown. And yeah, we know that Stafford's going to throw the ball a lot. The Rams have I believe they're 5th in pass yards, 2nd in pass attempts. He's averaging about 10 yards over this mark this season at 290 plus per game. He's actually gone over 300 passing yards 3 times out of 5 games this season. And the Cardinals allow Joe Burrow to throw for 287. You got Puka, you got Kupp. I think they're going to go off this weekend, and Stafford goes over the 279.5.
I love it. I think this is going to be a very pass-happy attack this game for the Rams against the Cardinals. Secondary, we talked about ad volumes has not been very good this season. Katie, I'm going to go to tonight's game. I'll give you two. I'll give you 2 player props here that I really do like. I mentioned the Russell Wilson over 32.5 pass attempts.
Yep.
Again, we talk about game script wise that if the Chiefs are going to get out to a double-digit lead or even have a touchdown lead, that the Broncos are going to have to throw the football, and that's going to have to be on the back, obviously, of Russell Wilson. Faced this team twice last season, being in the first year as the Denver Broncos quarterback. In those 2 games, he had 36 pass attempts and 38 pass attempts, respectively, against the Chiefs. And I think that I want to say 4 out of the 5 quarterbacks that have faced the Chiefs have gone over this projection as well. The only quarterback that didn't was Justin Fields in that blowout game just a few weeks back when we did have Taylor Swift in attendance, by the way. And I did see reports she should be at the game tonight as well. But
really?
I think I did see that. Somebody put out that report.
Okay.
But that's a different conversation. But yeah, I'll go Russell Wilson over 32.5 pass attempts. And then I'm going to look at the running back for the Kansas City Chiefs here, Isaiah Pacheco. His longest rush attempt over 16.5 rushing yards. We talked about how bad the Cincinnati Bengals rush defense is. Denver Broncos is equally as worse, or if not as, or is even more worse than the Cincinnati Bengals. They've allowed each running back to go over this projection over the last 5 weeks. And if you've watched Kansas City Chiefs games like a lot of us do, Isaiah Pacheco is a downhill runner. He's not afraid of making that contact. He's very swift with his legs. And I think that's going to be an opportunity for him to break one out against this Denver Broncos rush defense. Again, if we're expecting the weather to also be a factor here, it may just be a ground and pound game for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I'm taking Isaiah Pacheco, longest rush attempt over 16.5 yards.
All right. I like it. Thank you so much for joining the show today, Munaf. You can follow him on social at SportsNerd824. Shout out Kobe Bryant. And Munaf, tell us what you got working on, what you got going on at Sports Gambling Podcast Network.
It's that, like we talked about, that's that storm we have. NBA we're ramping up for, that starts in a week and a half. The NFL Gambling Podcast has been chugging along. We drop an episode every single week, every single day. The Propcast, if you're a player prop bettor, we have a podcast strictly just about player props. We do that for the NFL Thursday Night Football, and then obviously the Sunday games as well. We'll do it for the NBA as well. I will be dropping the ref report today, so look out for that.
Ooh, the ref report.
Yeah, look out for the ref report. I'll have that hopefully posted by later this afternoon. But yeah, it's busy times right now with playoffs for the MLB, NBA right on the corner. We're ramping up for, and obviously full swing in the NFL. So like you mentioned, just check out all my work over at sportsgamblingpodcast.com, or just follow me on X or Twitter, or whatever you wish to call it.
I just refuse to call it X.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's Twitter.
I can't do it. All right, everybody. Munaf, thank you for your time. This has been Moxie Bets presented by Caesar Sportsbook. Don't forget to follow us on social at Moxie Bets. Have a good weekend. Good luck on your bets. We'll see you Monday.